Princess Zarathel stood at the massive crystal window of her tower chamber, watching the twin suns set over the sprawling capital city of the Valerian Empire. Her delicate blue-scaled hands pressed against the cool surface as she observed the countless ships floating through the air lanes below. The sight never failed to fill her with wonder, even after 22 cycles of life in this golden palace. The Empire stretched across 47 star systems, home to dozens of alien species who had either joined willingly or been conquered by her father's mighty fleets. Emperor Kethmor ruled with an iron fist, his word absolute across the known galaxy. Yet his own daughter remained trapped in a prison of silence. Zarathel had been born without the ability to speak. In a society where vocal communication determined social status and political power, her condition marked her as deeply flawed. The royal physicians had tried everything: advanced medical procedures, technological implants, even forbidden genetic modifications. Nothing worked. Her vocal cords simply refused to function. The Emperor's disappointment had been crushing. A mute heir could never rule the Empire. The Council of Lords would never accept silent leadership, so Zarathel lived as a beautiful ornament, dressed in flowing silk robes and precious jewels, paraded at state functions but never allowed to participate in meaningful discussions. Her younger brother Mordek had become the official heir instead. He possessed their father's booming voice and commanding presence, qualities the Empire respected, but Zarathel saw what others missed. Mordek's cruelty, his hunger for conquest, his complete lack of empathy for the billions of beings under their rule. He would make a terrible emperor. Yet none dared question the succession. A soft chime announced an approaching visitor. Zarathel turned as her personal attendant. A kind Falarian named Wisp entered the chamber. Her cat-like features showed concern as she bowed gracefully. "Princess, your father requests your presence in the throne room. There are visitors from beyond the outer rim," Wisp said, her voice carrying that musical quality all Falarians possessed. "He wants you to observe the negotiations." Zarathel nodded and moved to her preparation alcove. Wisp helped her into ceremonial robes of deep purple, the color reserved for imperial family. Heavy golden jewelry adorned her neck and arms, each piece a symbol of her high birth and trapped status. The throne room was a marvel of engineering and artistry. Soaring pillars of black stone supported a domed ceiling painted with scenes of conquest. The Emperor's throne sat on a raised platform, carved from a single piece of crystalline meteor. Today, it was surrounded by the full court, nobles, military commanders, and advisors, all watching the proceedings with keen interest. Emperor Kethmor sat regally in his ceremonial armor, his reptilian features stern and imposing. Prince Mordek stood at his right side, already wearing the insignia of heir apparent. Zarathel took her designated position behind and to the left, visible but clearly separate from the line of power. The visitors were unlike any species she had encountered. They stood roughly 8 feet tall with pale, almost translucent skin. Their elongated limbs moved with fluid grace, and their large eyes seemed to take in everything at once. Most intriguingly, they communicated through rapid hand gestures and facial expressions, rather than spoken words. "Welcome to the Valerian Empire," Emperor Kethmor declared, his voice echoing throughout the vast chamber. "I am told your people wish to establish trade relations." The lead visitor, distinguished by intricate tattoos covering his arms, began a complex series of hand movements. A translation device worn by one of the court advisors converted the gestures into spoken words. "We are the Siltheri from the Andromeda Spiral. Our ships carry goods unknown to your empire. Crystalline energy sources that could power your fleets for centuries. Materials stronger than any metal. Biological compounds that could revolutionize your medicine." Murmurs of interest rippled through the court. Such resources would make the Empire even more powerful, potentially unstoppable in its expansion across the galaxy. "And what do you require in return?" the Emperor asked, leaning forward with obvious interest. The Siltheri leader continued his gestural communication. "We seek only one thing: a guarantee of safety for the refugee populations fleeing the destroyer fleet in our home galaxy. Worlds where they can settle and rebuild their civilizations." The court fell silent. Zarathel felt her hearts racing as she realized the implications. These beings weren't just traders, they were survivors of some catastrophic war, seeking sanctuary for their people. Emperor Keth Moore's expression hardened. You ask us to accept alien refugees with unknown customs and potential security risks. What assurance do we have they won't disrupt our carefully maintained order? The Siltheri exchanged rapid hand signals among themselves. Their leader's gestures became more urgent, more pleading. The destroyer fleet consumes everything in its path. Entire civilizations have fallen. Soon they will notice your galaxy as well. We offer our technology freely, asking only for compassion in return. Our refugees are scientists, artists, farmers, beings who want only to live in peace. Prince Mordek stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chamber. Father, accepting refugee populations would strain our resources and create potential instability. However, their technology could significantly enhance our military capabilities. Indeed, the Emperor agreed. We are willing to trade for your technology, but we cannot accept responsibility for refugee populations. Direct us to uninhabited worlds where your people can fend for themselves. Zarathel watched the Siltheri delegation with growing dismay. Their gestures became smaller, defeated. These beings had traveled across the void between galaxies, offering incredible wealth in exchange for basic mercy, only to be rejected. The lead Siltheri made one final series of hand movements, his large eyes reflecting deep sadness. You possess great power, but lack wisdom. The destroyer fleet will come eventually. When it does, you will understand our desperation. We withdraw our offer. As the delegation prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. One of the younger Siltheri, perhaps moved by emotion, pulled a small crystalline vial from his robes. The liquid inside glowed with soft, pulsing light. Wait, he gestured frantically. This is essence of the communication bloom, a flower that grows only in the sacred gardens of our homeworld. Legend says it can bridge any gap in understanding, allow any being to communicate perfectly with another, regardless of species or physical limitations. The Emperor waved dismissively. We have no need for fairy tales, but the young Siltheri had already thrown the vial. It arced through the air, shattering on the stone steps leading to the throne. The glowing liquid spread quickly, forming intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. Guards moved to restrain the young alien, but he gestured frantically toward Zarathel. The Silent One. She understands. The liquid seeks those who need it most. Before anyone could react, some of the glowing substance had begun to evaporate, creating a shimmering mist that drifted through the throne room. Zarathel felt it brush against her skin like a gentle caress, warm and somehow alive. Seize them, Emperor Keth Moore commanded, furious at the disruption to his court. But the Siltheri delegation had already activated personal teleportation devices, vanishing in flashes of blue light. Only the broken vial and spreading luminous patterns remained as evidence of their presence. Clean this mess immediately, the Emperor ordered, rising from his throne. I want no trace of their mystical nonsense in my palace. As servants rushed forward with cleaning equipment, Zarathel felt a strange tingling sensation in her throat. It was subtle at first, like the memory of swallowing something warm. She touched her neck reflexively, wondering if she had imagined it. The court quickly dispersed, nobles and advisors returning to their usual duties. The failed negotiation would be recorded as another example of alien incompetence, a footnote in the Empire's endless expansion. But as Zarathel walked back to her chambers, the tingling sensation grew stronger. Her throat felt different somehow. Not painful, but changed. She quickened her pace, eager to examine herself in private. Wisp followed closely, her feline instincts detecting something unusual about her mistress. Princess, are you feeling well? You seem agitated. Zarathel wanted to respond, to explain the strange sensations coursing through her body. She opened her mouth to make the hand gestures that served as her primary communication method. Instead, a sound emerged. It was barely a whisper, rough and uncertain, but unmistakably a voice. Her voice. I can. The words died in shock. Zarathel pressed both hands to her throat, tears streaming down her scaled cheeks. After 22 cycles of silence, she had spoken. Wisp's ears flattened in amazement. "Princess? Did you just speak?" Zarathel whispered, the word clear and beautiful despite its softness. "I can speak." The implications crashed over her like a tidal wave. A voice meant political power. It meant the right to participate in imperial governance. It meant she could finally challenge her brother's claim to the throne. But more than that, it meant she could act on the growing conviction that had been building in her hearts for years. The Valerian Empire was wrong. Its endless conquest, its dismissal of lesser species, its lack of compassion, all of it went against everything she believed. The Scytheri delegation's plea had awakened something in her. They were refugees, fleeing genocide, offering incredible gifts in exchange for simple mercy. And her father had turned them away without a second thought. "Wisp," she said, marveling at the sensation of forming words with her own vocal cords. "What do you know about the Outer Rim territories?" Her attendant looked puzzled. "Very little, Princess. They're considered frontier regions, barely civilized." "Why do you ask?" Zarathel moved to her personal data terminal, her fingers dancing over the controls as she accessed Imperial records. If she was going to change things, she needed information. "I think," she said slowly, "it's time I learned about the galaxy beyond these palace walls." The terminal displayed star charts, trade routes, and military deployment reports. For the first time in her life, Zarathel began to truly understand the scope of her father's empire and the countless beings living under its rule. Most were not volunteers. They were conquered peoples, their worlds strip-mined for resources, their cultures suppressed in favor of imperial uniformity. The wealth that built this golden palace came from the suffering of billions. "Princess," Wisp said carefully, "you're scaring me." "What are you thinking?" Zarathel turned from the terminal, her newfound voice steady and determined. "I'm thinking that maybe it's time for a change. A real change." Outside her window, the twin suns had set completely, leaving the capital city illuminated by the glow of countless artificial lights. Somewhere in the darkness, ships were launching for the Outer Rim, carrying imperial orders to worlds that had no choice but to obey. But now there was something different in the galaxy. A mute princess had found her voice, and with it, perhaps the courage to challenge an empire. 3 months had passed since Princess Zarathel first spoke, and she had used that time wisely. Her newfound voice remained a closely guarded secret, known only to Wisp and a handful of trusted allies she had carefully cultivated within the palace staff. To the rest of the empire, she remained the silent ornament, attending court functions and maintaining her facade of helpless beauty. But behind the scenes, Zarathel had become something far more dangerous than anyone suspected. An information gatherer with access to the highest levels of imperial power. Her quarters had been transformed into a hidden command center. Holographic displays showed real-time data from across the empire, transmitted by sympathetic communications officers who believed they were helping with cultural research projects. What they were actually providing was evidence of systematic oppression on a scale that shocked even Zarathel. "The Kalani system reported another uprising yesterday," Wisp said, updating the current crisis map. "That's the 15th world to experience unrest this month alone." Zarathel studied the data streams flowing across her screens. Each rebellion followed the same pattern. Increased resource extraction quotas, forced conscription of young adults, suppression of local customs. The Empire's response was always identical. Overwhelming military force, followed by harsh punishment for entire populations. "What about the Scytheri?" she asked, her voice now strong and clear after months of practice. "No confirmed sightings since their delegation left the throne room. Intelligence reports suggest they've established hidden bases in the neutral zones between galaxies, but their exact location remains unknown." The young Scytheri who had thrown the communication essence had changed everything, though he probably never realized it. The substance had done more than restore her voice. It had somehow enhanced her natural telepathic abilities, allowing her to sense emotions and sometimes even surface thoughts from other beings. This new sensitivity had revealed the true scope of suffering throughout the Empire. Every court session now brought waves of pain from suppressed memories, fear from conquered delegates, and rage from military officers forced to carry out unconscionable orders. "Princess," Wisp said carefully, "I've been monitoring Imperial communications as you requested. Your brother has been meeting privately with the High Command. They're planning something called Operation Cleansing Dawn." Zarathel's blood chilled. "Show me." The main display switched to intercepted military communications. The details were fragmentary but horrifying. Prince Mordek intended to solve the rebellion problem permanently by making examples of entire planetary populations. Worlds that had shown defiance would be sterilized, their inhabitants relocated to labor camps, or simply eliminated. "How many worlds?" Zarathel asked quietly. "Initial targeting includes 12 systems, Princess. Population estimates suggest approximately 40 billion sentient beings." The number was staggering. 40 billion lives snuffed out to maintain Imperial order. Zarathel closed her eyes and reached out with her enhanced telepathic abilities, trying to sense the distant suffering that would soon multiply beyond imagination. "When does it begin?" "Next week, during the Festival of Conquest. Your brother wants the cleansing to coincide with the Empire's celebration of expansion." Zarathel stood abruptly, her mind racing. A week wasn't enough time to warn every world or organize any meaningful resistance. But there might be another way. "Wisp, I need you to arrange a meeting with Captain Torval of the Palace Guard, the one who served on the frontier worlds before being promoted to the Imperial sector." Her attendant's ears flicked nervously. "Princess, that's incredibly dangerous. If anyone discovers you can speak, then we'll face that problem when it comes. But I can't stand by and let this happen. Not when I finally have the power to act." Captain Torval arrived that evening, still uncertain why the mute princess had requested his presence. He was a grizzled Drakmori warrior, his scaled hide bearing scars from a dozen campaigns across the Outer Rim. His reptilian features showed confusion as he bowed stiffly. "You summoned me, Princess?" Zarathel stepped from the shadows where she had been waiting. "Yes, Captain. And I think it's time you learned something that might shock you." "Captain Torval," she said clearly, watching his eyes widen in amazement, "I need your help to save the Empire from itself." The massive warrior staggered backward, his clawed hand instinctively reaching for his weapon before training took over. "Princess, you can speak? How is this possible?" "The how matters less than the why," Zarathel replied. "Tell me, Captain, what did you see during your service on the frontier worlds?" Torval's scarred features hardened. "I saw things that haunt my dreams, Princess. Orders to destroy civilian settlements. Children separated from their families. Worlds strip-mined until nothing remained but poisoned rock. And did you ever question those orders?" A long pause. "A soldier's duty is to obey, Princess. But yes, in my hearts, I questioned much." Zarathel activated her hidden displays, showing him the intelligence she had gathered. "Then, look at this, Captain. See what's coming next." As Torval absorbed the details of Operation Cleansing Dawn, his expression shifted from confusion to horror to barely contained rage. 40 billion beings, he whispered, including children, elders, non-combatants. "My brother calls it maintaining order. I call it genocide. And as a member of the Imperial family, I have both the authority and the obligation to stop it." The captain's military training warred with his conscience. "Princess, what you're suggesting is treason. The punishment would be death for all involved. The punishment for doing nothing will be the destruction of everything this empire could become," Zarathel countered. "Captain, you've seen the outer worlds. You know there are species out there with technologies and knowledge that could benefit everyone. The Siltheri delegation offered us gifts beyond imagination in exchange for simple compassion. Instead of partnership, we chose domination." She moved to another display, showing intercepted transmissions from the galaxy's edge. "But there's something else, Captain. Something the Emperor and my brother don't know." The screen filled with sensor data from deep space monitoring stations. Massive signatures, Unlike anything in the Imperial databases, we're moving through the void between galaxies. The destroyer fleet the Siltheri warned us about. It's real, and it's heading toward our galaxy. Conservative estimates put their arrival at less than 2 years. When they get here, this empire will need every ally it can find. Torval studied the readings with a professional eye. These power signatures, Princess, I've never seen anything like this. If these readings are accurate, each of their ships masses more than our largest battle stations. Exactly. We can't fight this threat through conquest and fear. We need cooperation, unity, shared knowledge from every species in known space, but that's impossible as long as the Empire treats other beings as resources to be exploited. The captain was quiet for a long moment, processing everything he had learned. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a lifetime spent following orders he privately questioned. What do you need, Princess? Over the following days, Zarathel's network grew carefully and quietly. Captain Torval identified other military officers troubled by their orders, while Wisp reached out to palace staff from conquered worlds who maintained secret loyalty to their original cultures. The most crucial recruitment came from an unexpected source, Dr. Yirak, the Kalani scientist forced to work in the Imperial Research Division. Her people were one of the species targeted for cleansing, and her advanced knowledge of quantum communication systems proved invaluable. I can establish secure channels to resistance networks throughout the Empire, she explained during a clandestine meeting in the palace's abandoned sublevels. But transmitting warnings about the cleansing operation will require access to the primary communications array. That's located in the military command center, Torval noted. Heavily guarded, multiple security protocols. Even with my authorization codes, we'd need a significant distraction. Zarathel had been considering this problem for days, and she thought she had a solution. It was risky beyond measure, but it might be their only chance. The Festival of Conquest begins tomorrow, she said. The entire Imperial Court will gather for the opening ceremonies. That includes most of the palace guard and security personnel. One. You want to infiltrate the command center during the festival? Dr. Yirak asked incredulously. No, Zarathel replied. I want to use the festival itself as our platform. The ceremonies are broadcast live to every world in the Empire. Billions of beings will be watching. The implications hit them simultaneously. Wisp was the first to voice what they were all thinking. Princess, you're talking about revealing yourself publicly. Once you speak at the festival, there's no going back. Your father and brother will know you've been deceiving them, and they'll also know I'm challenging the succession, Zarathel added calmly. By Imperial law, any family member capable of vocal leadership can contest the heir's claim. The council will be forced to consider my petition. Captain Torval looked skeptical. Even if they accept your challenge, the Emperor won't simply step aside. This could trigger a civil war. Civil war may be preferable to genocide, Zarathel replied, and we won't be fighting alone. Every world facing cleansing, every species that suffered under Imperial oppression, every being who dreams of something better, they'll be our allies. That night, as she prepared for what might be her final hours of anonymity, Zarathel reached out with her telepathic abilities one last time. She touched the minds of beings across the palace, sensing their fears, hopes, and hidden thoughts. In the servants' quarters, she felt the homesickness of displaced workers forced to labor far from their families. In the military barracks, she sensed the guilt of soldiers carrying out orders that violated their personal codes of honor. Even among the nobility, she detected growing unease about the Empire's direction. But most powerfully, she felt the presence of something else, a vast network of consciousness stretching across the galaxy. The Siltheri weren't gone. They were watching, waiting, hoping that someone within the Empire might eventually choose a different path. Tomorrow, during the Festival of Conquest, she would give them their answer. The twin suns rose over the capital city, illuminating the massive ceremonial plaza where millions had gathered to celebrate the Empire's expansion. Military parades showcased the latest weapons and conquered treasures filled display platforms. It was a demonstration of power designed to inspire fear and loyalty in equal measure. Emperor Keth Mor, and Prince Mordek took their positions on the primary dais, resplendent in ceremonial armor. The broadcast would reach every inhabited world, carrying their message of imperial dominance to countless billions. Zarathel, dressed in her traditional silent robes, stood at her designated position behind the throne. To everyone watching, she appeared to be the same decorative princess who had graced these ceremonies for years. But beneath her calm exterior, her hearts raced with anticipation and terror. In moments, she would either save the empire from its worst impulses or destroy herself trying. The emperor began his annual address, his voice booming across the plaza and into space. He spoke of conquest, of order imposed through strength, of the empire's destiny to rule all civilized worlds. As planned, Prince Mordek would follow with announcements of new expansion campaigns, the perfect moment to reveal Operation Cleansing Dawn to the galaxy. Zarathel waited, her newly found voice ready to change everything. Prince Mordek stepped forward to the ceremonial podium, his armor gleaming under the twin suns. The crowd of millions fell silent, waiting to hear about new conquests and expanded territories. Broadcasting stations across 47 star systems prepared to carry his words to every inhabited world in the Empire. "Citizens of the Valerian Empire," he began, his voice carrying the trained authority of future leadership. "Today marks not just celebration of our past victories, but announcement of our most decisive action yet." Princess Zarathel felt her heart's hammering as she watched her brother prepare to reveal the genocide that would stain their family name forever. Operation Cleansing Dawn would begin within hours of his announcement, and 40 billion beings would die to satisfy his vision of imperial order. To maintain stability and prevent the spread of rebellion, Mordek continued, "We will implement comprehensive pacification protocols across 12 star systems. These measures will ensure lasting peace through the murder of children," Zarathel said quietly. Her voice wasn't amplified by the ceremonial sound systems, but her enhanced telepathic abilities, boosted by the Siltheri essence, projected her words directly into the minds of everyone present. Millions of beings suddenly heard thoughts that weren't their own, spoken in a voice they had never expected to hear. The crowd's murmur of confusion rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. Emperor Kethmor turned sharply, his reptilian features twisted in shock as he saw his supposedly mute daughter step forward. "Through the systematic extermination of entire populations," Zarathel continued, her physical voice now joining the telepathic projection. Every broadcasting station in the Empire was picking up her words, carrying them across the galaxy. "Through genocide, disguised as policy." Prince Mordek's rehearsed speech died in his throat. "Sister, you will return to your position immediately." Guards, but Captain Torval and his carefully selected loyalists were already moving. Palace guards who had grown sick of following unconscionable orders stepped aside rather than restrain her. The captain himself positioned himself between Zarathel and the throne, his hand resting meaningfully on his weapon. "I am Princess Zarathel, firstborn of the imperial line," she declared, her voice now reaching every corner of the plaza through the amplification systems Dr. Yurak had secretly modified. "By the ancient laws of succession, I claim the right to contest the heir's authority through trial of voice and wisdom." Emperor Kethmor rose from his throne, his face purple with rage. "You have no voice. You are defective, broken, unfit for leadership. I have the same voice I was born with." Zarathel replied calmly. "The Siltheri delegation simply helped me find it again. And through it, I learned the truth about what we have become." She turned to address the crowd, and, by extension, the entire empire watching through their communication networks. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the emotions of billions of beings. Confusion, fear, hope, and growing excitement, as they realized something unprecedented was happening. "Citizens of every world, beings of every species, I speak to you now with knowledge that has been hidden from us all. The empire we call mighty is built on suffering. The wealth we celebrate is stolen. The order we prize is maintained through terror and oppression. Across the galaxy, in countless homes and gathering places, people pressed closer to their viewing screens. This was not just political theater. It was revolution being broadcast live. 3 months ago, refugees from another galaxy came to us seeking help, Zarathel continued. They offered incredible gifts. Technology that could solve our energy problems. Materials that could revolutionize construction. Medicine that could eliminate countless diseases. In exchange, they asked only for sanctuary for their displaced peoples. Her father found his voice again. Lies. They offered nothing of value. They offered everything of value, Zarathel countered. They offered the chance to become an empire worthy of respect, rather than one built on fear. And we rejected them because accepting refugees might inconvenience our perfect order. She activated a hidden control in her sleeve, and Dr. Yirak's modifications to the communication system came online. Massive holographic displays materialized above the plaza, showing the evidence she had gathered over the past months. The first images showed strip-mined worlds, their surfaces scarred by massive extraction operations. The second revealed forced labor camps where beings who had resisted imperial rule worked under horrific conditions. The third displayed military communications detailing Operation Cleansing Dawn. Gasps and cries of shock rippled through the crowd as they saw the true scope of imperial brutality. Many had suspected, but seeing proof made it impossible to deny. And now, Zarathel said, her voice heavy with emotion, my brother plans to extend this brutality to its logical conclusion. Operation Cleansing Dawn will sterilize 12 star systems. 40 billion beings will die not because they threaten the Empire, but because they dared to ask for basic dignity. Prince Mordek drew his ceremonial sword, its blade crackling with energy. Enough of this madness. You speak treason and lies. I speak truth and hope, Zarathel replied, not backing down despite the weapon pointed at her. But there's more you need to know. All of you. The holographic displays shifted to show the deep space sensor readings she had discovered. Massive shapes moving through the void between galaxies, their scale dwarfing anything the Empire had ever constructed. The destroyer fleet the Siltheri warned us about is real. It consumed their home galaxy, and now it's heading for ours. Conservative estimates place their arrival at 18 months. When they get here, we'll face a threat that makes our internal conflicts seem trivial. The Emperor stared at the readings, his military experience immediately grasping their implications. These power signatures. How do you know this information is authentic? Because the Siltheri have been monitoring their approach for decades, Zarathel replied. They've been trying to warn every inhabited galaxy in their path. We're not the first civilization they've approached for help. She gestured, and new images appeared. Recordings transmitted by the refugee fleet, showing worlds being consumed by the advancing destruction. Entire star systems disappeared into massive harvesting structures, their matter converted to fuel for an unstoppable armada. This is what's coming, she said quietly. And we can't fight it alone. We need allies, cooperation, shared knowledge from every species in known space. But that's impossible, as long as we treat other beings as resources to exploit. The crowd had fallen completely silent, millions of minds processing the revelation that their galaxy faced extinction. Across the Empire, planetary governors and military commanders were receiving emergency communications as local populations demanded answers. Emperor Kethmore's expression had shifted from rage to calculation. Even if this threat is real, abandoning imperial discipline would create chaos. Order must be maintained. Order built on oppression isn't order, Zarathel replied. It's a facade waiting to collapse. When the destroyer fleet arrives, how many of our loyal worlds will fight to save an empire that's brutalized them? How many conquered species will choose to stand with us rather than take their chances with the invaders? She extended her telepathic abilities as far as they would reach, touching minds across the imperial capital and beyond. What she found was exactly what she expected. Fear. Yes. But also growing determination and hope. The choice is simple, she announced. We can continue down the path of conquest and domination, watching our empire crumble from within, while we face annihilation from without. Or we can choose something different. Prince Mordek raised his energy sword higher. Father, end this charade. She speaks madness and sedition. But before Emperor Kethmore could respond, new sounds echoed across the plaza. Ships were approaching from orbit, not imperial vessels, but sleek craft with designs unlike anything in their databases. The Siltheri had been waiting and watching. As Zarathel's words were broadcast across the galaxy, they had decided to reveal themselves. A dozen of their elegant ships descended into the capital city's airspace, their hulls glowing with the same soft light as the communication essence that had restored her voice. They landed gracefully in the ceremonial plaza, their arrival forcing the crowd to move back but causing no panic. The lead ship's entry port opened, and the same young Siltheri who had thrown the vial stepped out. His gestures were calm and deliberate, as translation devices converted them to speech. "We have monitored your transmission across all frequencies," he said through the translators. "Princess Zarathel speaks truth. The destroyer fleet will arrive in your galaxy sooner than predicted. Our latest calculations suggest 14 months, not 18. Emperor Kethmore found himself facing a situation no military training had prepared him for. His mute daughter had found her voice and was challenging everything he had built, while alien refugees were landing in his capital city, offering assistance against an unimaginable threat. "Why should we trust beings who refused our initial negotiations?" he demanded. The Siltheri leader's gestures became more animated. "Because we have encountered civilizations like yours before. Always the same pattern: expansion through conquest, order through oppression, strength through fear. And always the same result when they faced the destroyer fleet. New holographic displays materialized around the aliens' ships, showing images from their homeworld's databases. Dozens of galactic civilizations, each believing themselves supreme, each falling to the approaching darkness because they couldn't unite their fractured territories in time. The destroyer fleet feeds on conflict," the Siltheri explained. "They arrive at galaxies already weakened by internal strife, their populations divided and suspicious of each other. Conquest becomes simple when your targets are fighting among themselves." Zarathel stepped closer to the alien delegation. "But it doesn't have to be that way. We can choose cooperation over conquest, unity over oppression. And how exactly do you propose to achieve this impossible transformation?" Prince Mordek sneered. "The Empire spans 47 star systems. You cannot simply declare peace and expect it to manifest." "I propose we start by canceling Operation Cleansing Dawn," Zarathel replied firmly. "Instead of sterilizing 12 systems, we offer them partnership. Instead of eliminating 40 billion beings, we invite them to help defend our galaxy." She turned back to address the entire Empire through the broadcast networks. "To every world watching this transmission, I make you this promise. If you grant me the authority to lead, the age of imperial conquest ends today. We will become an alliance of free worlds, united by choice rather than force." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, communication networks lit up with replies from planetary governments. Worlds that had been scheduled for cleansing declared their immediate loyalty to the princess who had saved their populations. Species that had suffered under imperial rule offered their support for the promised transformation. But most surprisingly, responses came from beyond the Empire's borders. The Kalani resistance networks, other refugee groups, even isolated human colonies that had been hiding in the galaxy's outer regions, all declaring their willingness to join a true alliance against the coming threat. Emperor Kethmore watched the flood of communications with a mixture of amazement and growing realization. His daughter's voice had done in minutes what his armies had failed to achieve in decades. It had united the galaxy. "Father," Zarathel said gently, "you built something remarkable. An empire that spans star systems, technologies that seem miraculous, military forces capable of defending entire sectors. But empires built on fear always fall. Alliances built on hope can last forever." The old emperor looked at his daughter, really seeing her for perhaps the first time in her life. The mute ornament he had dismissed had become something he had never imagined possible. A leader whose voice could inspire loyalty rather than demand it. Prince Mordek, however, was not ready to accept this transformation. "This is treason," he declared, raising his energy sword to strike down his sister. Captain Torval moved to intercept, but Zarathel gestured for him to stand down. Instead, she reached out with her telepathic abilities, touching her brother's mind directly. What she found there shocked her, not evil or malice, but fear and desperate need for approval. Mordek had spent his entire life trying to live up to their father's expectations, believing that strength and ruthlessness were the only traits that mattered. "Mordek," she said softly, "you don't have to be what father taught us to be. You can be better. We both can." For a moment, something flickered in the prince's eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps even hope. But years of conditioning won out, and his grip on the sword tightened. "I will not let you destroy everything we've built." "I'm not destroying it," Zarathel replied sadly. "I'm trying to save it." The energy blade swung downward, but instead of striking flesh, it met the glowing barrier projected by Siltheri technology. The young alien who had restored her voice had been monitoring the confrontation, ready to intervene if necessary. "Your brother's fear blinds him to possibility," the Siltheri gestured. "But fear can be healed, just as silence can be cured." Emperor Kethmore finally spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of years. "Zarathel, daughter I never truly knew, show me this alliance you envision. Prove that hope can indeed triumph over fear." As the twin suns reached their zenith, marking the traditional climax of the Festival of Conquest, Princess Zarathel stood before her transformed empire and spoke the words that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. "Today marks the end of the Valerian Empire and the beginning of the Galactic Alliance. To every being watching this transmission, regardless of species or homeworld, I extend this invitation. Join us not as subjects, but as equals. Help us face the coming darkness together. And together, we will ensure that the light of civilization never dies." The response was immediate and thunderous. Across 47 star systems, beings who had lived in fear for generations raised their voices in celebration. The galaxy itself seemed to awaken, as if a long nightmare had finally ended. But even as they celebrated, long-range sensors detected new movement in the void between galaxies. The destroyer fleet had noticed their transmissions and was accelerating its approach. The real battle was just beginning. Yet for the first time in Imperial history, they would face that battle not as conquerors ruling through fear, but as allies united by hope. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would make all the difference. Princess Zarathel, no longer mute, no longer silent, had given her voice to the galaxy. Now it was time to see what that voice could accomplish.